Today is Wednesday. Yes, Wednesday, following the US midterm elections, and it's a very interesting election to follow. Now, listen, uh, I don't particularly have any skin in that game, although I do believe that in general, the entire West needs to move to the center, or more centrist position. Currently, it's extreme left in both Europe and North America, and so, it would have been interesting to see what happened there. Apart from that, I'm not left wing, I'm not right wing. I don't have any particular skin in that game, except I do find the American elections very interesting, because it's America's still kind of like the cutting edge of the world in many ways, and America's a work in progress, and the West is a work in progress, and by observing what happens in the USA, you can learn an awful lot indeed. Now, there was a huge anticipation of something called a red wave that was going to happen. And I kind of even thought it was going to happen myself. And I woke up this morning and then someone says to me, "Oh, it didn't happen yesterday. Things are basically the same as they were." And I looked in line and I said, "Oh yeah, they are basically the same as what they are. There was some moderate gains for the Republicans here and there. But in general, outside Florida, there wasn't the red wave that people were expecting." And then I spent the rest of the morning just thinking a lot about it and looking at the various videos and stuff like that, watching local cable TV broadcasts from the USA on YouTube, and just to gauge the kind of zeitgeist in the thing at the moment. And I think I know. And if you're not interested in elections, I, I would tell you to pay attention to this video, because there's a lot of useful data coming out of the American election that's absolutely vital for us as the tribes in terms of how we survive and things like that in this world going forward. What we've seen in the US mid is proof positive humanity is now two different species. The jabbed Awokis and us, the purebloods. They're now a completely different species than we are. They have been pharmacologically, consciously reframed and technologically processed into a new form of human. Do you remember back in, and it's been going on for a while, but the media was kind of like the first thing that assaulted our consciousness. This was then followed by the Jabberwockies. Now, the results of the election in America is exactly the effect of the Jabberwocky. And this is what we're looking at is the future of the West. We now have an enormous population percentage that are no longer human beings in that real sense anymore. I'm not saying they're inferior or anything like that. They're just different. To use the old Freemasonic thing, that which has been made imperfect has been made perfect. That which has been scattered has been gathered up and made into something new. They're not us, and they're just not us. I suggest you go and watch the 1960s movie with Rod Taylor of the Time Machine and observe the Eloi. I use the picture in this, the thumbnail for this. They just are zombies. They're vegan zombies. That's basically all they are. That have no opinions on anything. And they are the NPCs. And remember, H.G. Wells, who wrote The Time Machine, was an enormous Fabian. And he was, if you want to read, I covered it in Valpurgis Night, my book. But he was he had a remarkable hatred of the working class, and particularly uneducated people. When his uneducated means someone didn't have a college degree or university, didn't go to the right Eton or Harrow or somewhere like that, Oxford or Cambridge, and he wanted them exterminated, and he just wanted worker drones all wearing the same uniforms, and he wrote the Time Machine to show us the future that was coming. And the purpose of the guy going from Scotland into the future and seeing the Eloi and becoming angry about it wasn't so much that he can go back and change it. It was to tell them that if you're a traditional Western man, raised on Western civilizational values, you're not going to like the future we have planned for you. And that's us, isn't it? That's us. And what we saw is the Eli voting on both sides, by the way, on both sides. Now, what data can we use to determine and ascertain this theory? Quite simply, Florida. Now, Florida is the control subject in the United States. Because of Pete DeSantis, the governor there, they had the only sane policy in the world, even more sane than Sweden. They did not devolve into COVID consciousness. This is a very important factor that's left out of the whole COVID thing, is that a new form of consciousness, a kind of a trans-global culture, was created by using everything from the masks, the social distancing, and on to the Jabberwockies, and the constant carry-on like that. Florida didn't have that. Life went on as normal. So you can, and you saw the results of the election in Florida, very different than anywhere else. And not only that, the whole energetic level was completely different. DeSantis stood on stage and spoke about that Florida is a place where the woke goes to be destroyed, and that's a lot of that has to do with the fact that you would have in a place where there's less consciousness about it, you wouldn't have the mental and psychological damage that COVID consciousness has brought to places where we were saturated non-stop with it, i.e. here in Ireland and countries like Ireland, where literally the Irish population are now COVIDites. They're not even Irish anymore. They're COVIDites, okay? That's the only way you could describe them. And that's what the most United States were as well. And very importantly, Republican and Democrat. Now, why nothing changed was, do you remember when they started rolling out the Jabberwockies and the Needlecraft? After when the first one came out, lots of people had reactions. Everything from going blind to being sick for a few days, and then some weren't affected at all. So there was probably, because it was a mass program, we were able to get very good data on what percentage of people actually suffer from reactions to this needlecraft. Now, also bear in mind too, because of the lockdown, their immune systems were immunosuppressed, so they didn't get the previous flu from the previous year because they didn't give us a Christmas, that kind of a thing. And so people didn't get the natural immunity top up that they would get from just existing in everyday life. Therefore, when they were hit with the first needlecraft, some of them became quite ill. Some of them even died, and some didn't. And that was because their immune systems of the population as a whole had been immunosuppressed by the fact that they were all locked down. They didn't get out there and mingle. Now and top up their immune system by natural association with viruses. Now those people, the ones that got the second one, and you remember, and you go back and look through my videos, you'll hear me say this. They had distinct personality changes. Do you remember the video where I went, like, when you're talking to them, they go, huh, hmm. Well, that's why the midterms didn't happen. Their vital spark, and you've all noticed this, has been switched off. Their vital spark has been switched off. This is why people like us look at Biden going, here we are in 2037, and the men, women, and they go to him. That man is cognitively not well. Well, they go, because they don't see he's not different from them. They've all been psychologically and vitally, and their kinetic energy has been neutered by the needlecraft second dose. That's the same way you're looking at Fetterman in Pennsylvania. Now, Pennsylvania is a state with serious problems. Philadelphia, once a beautiful shining jewel of a city, is now in bits drugs. They're it's an absolute mess. There's lots of problems there, and basically, it's very Democrat. It was central to the rigging of the 2020 election, and they all went out and voted for a man who's clearly not well and should be in care, Fetterman. That man, and also didn't like the way a lot of the TV reports from right wing television shows were making fun of the guy. He had a stroke. He's sick. He's not well. Now I know he has these wacky policies, but the majority of people in Pennsylvania, with the exception of the Amish who don't touch Jabberwockies, were looking at him going, well, that's how they talk now. That's what the Jabberwocky has done to them. So while we sit there, how could they vote for that guy? How could they vote for that guy? Well, because they're just like him now. That's welcome to the future. Welcome to the Eloi. There they are. Now, one particular race that's fascinating was the Arizona race. Now, when I lived in the United States, Arizona was a place I know a lot of people from New York moved to. It was Arizona and New Mexico, and a lot of people I know went to the Southwest. It was kind of like the new American promise, the last outpost of the American dream was seen to be there. So a lot of couples who were getting married and they wanted this traditional American family were moving to Phoenix and Tucson and Santa Fe and that kind of thing, and that the Arizona particular one was very. So that was the whole culture, that Southwest culture, Arizona, Nevada, bits of Colorado, uh, New Mexico, very sort of like a very good kind of judge of a middle America now. That's really since the kind of death of the Midwest with the fall of the industry and that kind of thing, and this sort of super nationalization of agriculture. The real American sort of like middle America would be the southwestern states, those states I just mentioned. Uh, so so a lot of people went there. I know people that went there that way and got a very good quality of life. And it wouldn't be for me, but they were raising kids and families. It was great. And so this woman that run down there, Carrie Lake, very fascinating and dynamic woman. You'd look at her and say, well, if there's a politician in the world today that represents the tribe, she's probably it, you know. And yet, and the woman that she's running against was practically a retard, another Fetterman, and it looks like she lost. I mean, she was the dream politician that everyone would ever want. But they see this woman who's attractive, dynamic, interesting, can think for herself, and they what they see is something they don't understand. But the woman who's running against her was like another Fetterman. She's like, "Nom, nom, 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 nom." They, oh, that's one of ours. Guys, what we saw with the midterm elections was proof positive that we're the only human beings left on Earth. Those of us, now I know there are people who are needlecrafted who are in our side because they don't have COVID consciousness. You understand? They didn't fall, they may have got the Jabberwockies because they were forced into it, coerced. They did it for the love of their family or someone they loved. No problem there. But they haven't been COVIDized. They still have going to have health problems. We have to find a way to help them probably. But otherwise, they don't have that mindset. It really begins with the kind of brainwashing, and the brainwashing was done during the lockdowns. Having them watching TV, seeing the case numbers going up, the masks, very important part of the brainwashing, and the social distancing, and that changed their consciousness. It changed them into different people, a different, and the biopharma technological aspect of it turned them into a different species. I'm sure you're all experiencing this. You go over to people, your relatives' house where they're all Jabberwockied. You try to start a conversation, and they're not the same person. And they're all like, they're gone. They're gone. Why? Because they're living in a different framework than you are. They're off somewhere else. They are now the robots that the transhumanists wanted. And unfortunately, they're the majority in every country. So I still see people saying, we need to get the right people in Ireland to vote and to stand in elections. It won't make a difference. They'll still vote for the one that has the most propaganda on TV, because they can't think anymore. They can only follow the leader and follow orders. And that's why it's so important for us in the parallel society to move away from that. You see it all the time now. They're all, like, for instance, in Ireland, the number one closure of businesses is because of the high energy costs? Butcher shops. Butcher shops, traditional Irish butcher shops, can't stay open. They have refrigeration costs and things like that. So they have to close down. Well, that ties in with their, Kentucky Fried Crickets and Kentucky Fried Grasshopper agenda, doesn't it? Nicely. Because they know cold storage is a very expensive part and a very huge overhead within traditional butcher shops. Gone. So you could go and explain this to people. Say, you go to the guy's butcher shop who shut down, and he says, they deliberately did this. They've jacked up energy price to put you out of business, and you go, if he's Jabberwockied. Hmm. 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 Ah, sure. It's Homo Fetterman. That's what you're looking at. And you look at that woman Carrie Lake. You just see so done. But we're also learning how different Jabberwocky levels are in different countries. It looks like in Italy they're not as Jabberwockied as we thought they were. In Ireland they're completely Jabberwocky, to be like Arizona. But they'll always return the gimp. I mean, we have the guy that we run this country. We have Martin. He's like, I mean, he's just the most mediocre gimp you could imagine. And yet he will get back in. Why? Because television says so. Mm. They're not us anymore. They're not us. And the US election has given us phenomenal data that we can use in the months ahead. Think of, there was no red wave because there's huge numbers of people now. And I'm not putting down Americans. This is my country would be the same as well. I'm not picking on America now. I'm just saying America's a fantastic laboratory to examine things. Who will now gladly give their children to paedophiles. They will gladly transition their kids. The kids are just a little confused. They will have them castrated. They will gladly accept legalized paedophilia. I've no doubt about it. When you have like them bringing their little kids to pride parades where guys are dancing around with their cocks hanging out and stuff like that, and their aunts are giving them little rainbow teddy bears for Pride Week, the stray dance. It's only a matter of time before they'll have legal sexual access to children. And if you think that would be the straw that would break the camel's back in society, it won't. It won't. That's how different they are. It will with us, It will with us, but with the average one out there, no. If they can return I mean, if Philadelphia could vote a man who's dying before her eyes, back into office, that shows you what the needlecraft has done. If Arizona can reject a woman of the caliber and personality and charisma and refreshing dynamic of Carrie Lake, that's what the needlecraft has done. If you see Ron DeSantis' acceptance speech with his beautiful wife and children, and the crowd jumping up and down and dancing, that's what the needlecraft not having it does. Florida is a great litmus test for the needlecraft, for not being needlecraft. That's how the rest of what you saw in Florida today and yesterday is what the rest of the world would have been if we never had the lockdowns and the injections and all that stuff. And that's why the red wave didn't happen, because people's vital spark. No one sat there and went, I'm going to vote these bastards out. They waddled down to the machine. Fetterman, Dr. Oz. I don't like that Dr. Oz. He has a personality. Vote Fetterman. They go down to Arizona, the Phoenix polling station. the autistic Asperger running for the Democrats, Carrie, I don't like Carrie. Like, she behaves in a way I don't understand. She's effervescent, dynamic, and charismatic. I don't like that Democrat gimp. And I think we're going to get a rude awakening, folks, in the 2024 election. I am now pretty much, people are saying, well, the Democrats have nobody and the Republicans have two potential dynamic candidates, both in Trump and Ron DeSantis. I got news for you. Don't be surprised if Kamala Harris beats them in an election. And I mean a non-rigged election beats them, because they can't relate to the Jabberwockies can't relate to charismatic, dynamic people. They just cannot understand what they are, but they can relate to gimps that go, and as above, so below. That's why the red wave didn't happen. The population on both sides, the majority of them are no longer human beings. And again, I'm not picking on Americans. It's the same in the UK. Why wasn't there murder over what happened with the recent change of government in the UK? Because the majority of them there are going, why in Ireland will Fine Gael get a landslide in the next election? Because but most of all, don't be depressed today. If you're expecting the world to get back on track, we know how the cards are now dealt on the table. We know that that's all gone now. It was never really there for us, but it was a great way to kind of, as we saw in 2016, to rattle the bisto out of the globalists. I still believe that, of course, as long as there's states like Florida and there's lots of Americans who are not Jabberwockied, there's always hope. I don't see any hope in Ireland. We're too far. I mean, we're too far down the road here. And I do believe we're one of the highest injected rates in the world. And it's gone. The paddy is gone. And except for, people like us. This is why I'm not a nationalist, because I can't relate to the majority of people in my country anymore, because they're, so who am I? What am I now? I'm the tribe. You guys that have the same value system as me, who've not allowed themselves to be biochemically destroyed or annihilated for a seasonal virus that kills less than 1% of people, and 90% of them are grannies over 85. So that's why I can't be nationalist. I can be tribalist, but I can't be nationalist. It's just gone. It's over for me. And the same in America. I mean, why do you think so many people around the world, are listen to videos by my Irish arse? Because you're saying that's the world I used to live in. Where is it gone? Well, I got news for you, folks. It's still there in our hearts. And always know that. We will triumph and survive on our own terms.